So Bulawayo used to be the industrial capital of Zimbabwe. In fact, arguably it used to be the best city. If you look at its infrastructure, the way it was laid out, its buildings, the High Court, the City Hall, buildings like Treadgold Building, the way the suburbs were set out, particularly the high density suburbs. In the 1950s and 1960s, those were viewed as cutting edge. This was the greatest city in Africa, and that's my vision. We need to restore that. In the last 40 years, it has slowly run down. It is no longer an industrial hub. Many businesses that had their headquarters here have moved to Harare. The population has dwindled. It's a city which is filthy. It is marked by its litter and its potholes, and we need to reverse that. We have to be realistic. We need to understand that this is no easy task, even in the easiest political circumstances, but it's made even more difficult by virtue of the fact that much of the power that the City Council used to exercise has been transferred to central government. If I give you two examples of that. Firstly, regarding water, with Zinwe, the city used to control its own dams. And that power has been shifted to Harare. Secondly, all car licenses used to be paid and receipted here. That's moved to Harare. And that deprives the City Council of two critical areas of funding. So we have to reverse that to clean up the city. That's clean up in terms of litter, clean up in terms of corruption within the running of the city, and generally to make it more efficient. And once we've stabilized the city, then we can start to attract investment and rebuild this city.
Okay, but no.
So you can't just blame the decline for the last 20 years. This goes back 40 years. It goes back, it started after the Unity Accord. Quite frankly, the last competent city councils that we had were those dominated by ZAPU in the 1980s. And we've seen this shift to Harare. That has been compounded by the opposition in the last 20 years. We have not used the opportunity, but you cannot divorce that from the fact that during the time of the MDC controlled councils, much of the power has shifted to central government, and there's been substantial interference. For example, a few years ago, the Minister of Local Government simply wrote off rates. What does that do to the finances of a city council? Yes, whilst there could have been a better performance, you cannot divorce it from the wider factors that made it very difficult for any council to operate. I didn't accuse the mayor as an individual of corruption. And corruption is sometimes defined as a sausage. It's hard to describe, but it's easy to smell. All right? And it seems to me, from an outsider looking in, that some of the contracts that have been entered into do not appear to be in the best interests of citizens. We will only know that, I will only know that, if I'm elected to office. And my intention is to use my skills as a lawyer of 40 years experience here, my experience as Minister of Education, where I had to tackle corruption head on, to review those contracts, to see, were they lawfully entered into? Were the proper tender procedures followed? Are they in the best interests of the citizens? And if not, then we need to act to cancel those contracts and to ensure that we have contracts that are entered into for the best interests of the citizens. Two things. I mean, firstly, when when I was asked what position I wanted to stand for within the Triple C, I said, I've been out of politics, I've been out of government for 10 years, I'm now 65, I've got 7 grandchildren. My law firm needed a lot of attention when I came back. It had been neglected by me for 15 years. It's taken a lot to stabilize this law firm. I also enjoy mountain biking. You may not know this.
No, I usually follow your Facebook page.
Right. I mountain bike.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a life. So I said, I'm happy to be associated with the party, but put me on the senatorial list and you can put me at number 6. Triple C, even in the best of circumstances, won't get 100% of the vote, so I won't be elected, but I will have associated. And people within the party, and let me stress, outside of the party, okay, people from other political parties approached me and said, no, you can't just retire. Stand as a councillor with a view to playing a role within the city that you love. And it was in that context. So I don't see it as a downgrading. I see it as an opportunity to try and give back to a city that I love. I've lived here since 1961, and I have very close ties. The Stanbic Bank building next to Joshua Nkomo's statue was designed by my father. Okay, I started the Bulawayo Legal Project Centre. I was the one that got Khumalo Hockey Stadium and the White City Stadium rehabilitated as Minister of Sport. I was the one that persuaded the founders of Cure Children's Hospital to bring it to Bulawayo. I was the one that put forward the first idea to set up Petra College and was a trustee from 1986 to 2021. So the point I'm making is that my heart has always been in Bulawayo. I love Zimbabwe, but this is where my family is. 3 of my children, 3 of our 4 children are here. 5 of my 7 grandchildren are here. See this city achieve its potential.
I mean, both the people within the Triple C and people outside the Triple C have touted you to be the next mayor. I know you've said, no, let me first win the ward election, but will you accept if the opportunity comes?
So, to be frank, I view it as a poisoned chalice, because I think there are high expectations, and for the reasons I've explained to you, it's very difficult to achieve those, to meet those expectations. So I'm under no illusions that this is, in some respects, an even harder job than when I took over as Minister of Education. But it's also a long road. First of all, you can't count your chickens before you hatch. You've got to win your ward first. Then the Triple C has to win the election citywide. And then you've got to secure support amongst the colleagues. So if we go through that process, and if my party still wants me to be, yes, I will take that and give it a bash. You know, I find this whole debate quite ironic, because I've never made any secret of the fact that, as was the case with all 18-year-old white Rhodesian boys, that we were conscripted and had no choice. So that's never been any secret. But there's such a double standard. Many of the exceptionally rich white people aligned to ZANU-PF came from families that were in the Rhodesian front, which my family never was. There are Zulu scouts, genuine Zulu scouts, who are very close to this current regime. So what I say to people is, don't judge a person on what they perhaps did 50 years ago. Judge them on what they've done since independence. Have they demonstrated that they are true patriots? Have they tried to act in the best interests of all the citizens? And judge me on that. If you're going to judge me on when I was in the BSAP, then if people are going to be fair, judge the people very close to Mr. Mnangagwa, right? Who have issued openly racist statements just this year on Al Jazeera. Judge those people, and judge the real Zulu scouts who are close to this regime.
Maybe as we conclude, what's your message to the people of Bulawayo? People see you as a former Minister of Education, and there are people who are really hopeful that you might revive the status of the city. What's your message to them?
Well, my first message is have realistic expectations. If I'm elected, what I bring to this is experience. I bring determination. I bring a track record of achieving, going back 40 years. And I will do my best to turn this country, this city around. But it is going to take a collective effort. It can't be partisan. We have to reach out to all political players, all political parties, RNPF included. And that's what I did in the Ministry of Education. I said the Ministry of Education should be the least political ministry. And the same applies to running of a city. All our citizens, irrespective of their political views and background, need to have clean water, need to have roads, need to have housing and access to education. And it's only with that collective effort that we can turn this city around.